آل قرآني حفظتم آي رحماني وفضلتم تلاوته.
Okay, so turn to page 1 of the book where it says the introduction. Actually, no, page 2 of the book where it says the awakening. The awakening. So all the chapter headings are from me. I translated this in 1999. I think it was published in 2000 or 2001. But anyway, by 1999, I had finished translating it. The headings are mine. Some of them are obviously reflecting exactly what is in the text. One or two are a little bit cryptic. The awakening. Generally, in classical spiritual books, you'll find maqamul yaqadha or manzilul yaqadha, the station of awakening. Okay, it's when the Muslim realizes, it could be a non-Muslim who then becomes a Muslim, that's an awakening for sure. But normally it's the Muslim realizing, however he or she realizes that, you know what, I need to take my Iman and Islam seriously. I need to take my journeying to Allah seriously. Or, if I'm already doing the outward things seriously, I need to take the inward purity of my heart, the obligatory purification of the soul, seriously. Otherwise, I'm in danger of only doing things outwardly with no inward reality, and that is on the road to nifaq, hypocrisy, where hypocrisy is outward show of faith with no inward show of faith. And that moment, it can come due to a tragedy. It can come because someone hears a really inspiring talk or reads an inspiring book or watches an inspiring video. It could just come, this awakening could just come just by you're sitting on the bus and just Allah just casts something in your heart and you're, whoa. But whatever reason causes the heart to become awaken. Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu said, الناس نيام فإذا مات انتبه. All of mankind are asleep. When they die, they awaken. Right? Because at death, everybody will know the haqiqah of Allah, the haqiqah of La ilaha illallah, that Allah is the only sole deity of God to be worshipped. And we're going to be accountable to Him. All right? But by the time of death, it's too late for many, many people. We want to awaken before death. Okay? We want to awaken before death. So, in this introduction, Imam Sa'adi, he says after the first paragraph, and I'll just read it in English for the time being, most people are overwhelmed by their sensual pleasures and are enslaved or subjugated by their carnal desires and habits. They give no importance to this matter at all, meaning of journeying to Allah, nor attempt to make it the basis of their life. On the contrary, they turn away from worship and instead preoccupy themselves with desires. They abandon worship and instead dedicate themselves to their worldly pursuits. They do not prevent themselves in order to make up for the time they have squandered. So in their ignorance and oppression, they are confused. With their soul's desires, they are diverted from being devoted to Allah. Concerning their Lord's remembrance, they are heedless. In their religious practice, they are remiss. And in their drunken love of their habits, they blindly wander. Then the Shaykh quotes a verse, Nasrullah fa'ansahum anfusahum ulaika humul khasirun. Those who forgot Allah, Allah caused them to forget their own selves. Such are the losers. Such are the ones who have lost. Okay. So generally, it starts with an awakening, a yaqadha. In one lovely hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ says that Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina. That Allah sends down divine gifts. Okay, that in the time of our lives, in certain times of our lives, Allah sends down nafahat. That's the wording in the hadith. Nafahat literally means breaths. Okay, breaths. Here it means gifts. Ala fata'arradu laha. So present yourself to those gifts, those breaths. Eid, okay, and the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah are divine gifts. They're the best 10 days in the year. Laylatul Qadr, one of those odd nights in Ramadan, is one of those gifts. It's the best night of the year. Being given the opportunity to go to Makkah for Hajj or Umrah is a gift, because it's the most blessed place on earth. Even though there is this discussion about the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Medina, because of the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being the best place on earth, according to our classical scholars. But leaving that aside, generalizing it, Makkah is the best place on earth, the Haram of Makkah. Okay? Then the Haram of Medina. Okay? Those are, and if we were allowed to journey there, gifts. But also, gifts as in, it inspires me to start praying regularly and take my religion seriously and whatever else. Gifts. When Allah sends us these gifts, ala fata'arradu laha. Present yourself to them, or literally expose yourself to them. So what's going to happen is, if the temperature starts climbing higher and higher, as it did like 4 or 5 days ago, and gets in the late 20s, early 30 degrees, and you're walking down High Street North, okay, and it's kind of hot and sticking, whatever, and then just Allah may send a little breeze. I'm talking about a physical breeze now, like little wind. Okay, if you're like me, you might just you're walking down the high road and then you just kind of stick out your hands like that. So just like get a bit of fresh air kind of thing. That's exposing yourself to the gift. Metaphorically, we need to be doing that to Allah's gifts. Okay, bring it on kind of thing. Not turning our back on them or rolling up the window to stop the air, right? Most of us Muslims do exactly that. I'm getting feelings of being too religious. I better turn down. I mean, there is a problem of being too religious, as in becoming extreme. Okay, but otherwise, the problem isn't becoming too religious. The problem isn't becoming too religious enough. When the solution to when the secular-minded Muslim says, we shouldn't become so religious, that's why you get all this extremism. No, the problem is there wasn't enough proper religion there in the first place. Otherwise, the more religion, the merrier, as far as we're concerned. The earth will be better for it. As long as it's proper religion, proper deen, way of life. So, Imam As-Sa'di, the author of the poem, commenting on his own poem, he hasn't started the couplet yet, just says, look, it all begins with an awakening. Pay attention to awakening. And because awakening doesn't come in one form, it comes in thousands of different ways. There's always every hope and chance that any human being can be awakened. So never give up hope. And sometimes we're awakened and we fall back to sleep. Alarm clock goes off, I just press the snooze button and go back to sleep. No problem. Just like you can have repeat alarms, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us repeat awakenings. It's the tragedy is when we have had repeat awakenings and not one of them did we wake up on before death. That's the one who has lost all good. Otherwise, every time the alarm clock, you're slightly more awake than the last one, and then again and more awake. That's a good thing. I mean, it's still not good because I'm still not awake. But hey, something is happening. it's really important for newly practicing Muslims to use that popular expression. It's not a problem. Everything is fresh. The aspiration is strong. I'm a young Muslim woman student in uni, or a young Muslim male student at uni or college, and somehow I've come across Islam, YouTube videos, inspirational speakers, whatever it be, and I'm now, whatever, it's fresh, it's dynamic. There's nothing stopping you. And every generation, every later generation needs to be refreshed by that generation, really. But it's fresh. Nothing is stale. Yes, young people make lots of mistakes. They make lots of blunders. They don't pay enough attention to the wisdom of the elders. Yeah, that's true. But their iman, the vibrancy, they get up and go. It's fresh. It's dynamic. 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, 50 years later, 40, 50 years, it can get a bit stale. You go through the motions. You pray, whatever. But what has happened is the escalator of the dunya, the escalator of life, is going down. When you're young, you know that you can't be tugged by the downward pull. You need to go upwards. But you've got the drive and the energy to run up that escalator. I once knew someone back in the 80s, early 80s, who we got off at Leicester Square Station one day. And they decided, you know what, it was a Saturday evening, I'm going to run up the escalator. I was just about to tell them, don't do Leicester Square because it's one of the longest escalators on the underground. I mean, do Leytonstone or not Leytonstone, do something, right, which is shorter. This is twice as long as your normal escalators. Okay, and they were going to run up one of these escalators because it wasn't moving. Okay, the other one was moving. So I got on the one that was moving up. All right, because I was young then and I knew I could do it, but, And so they ran up the non-moving escalator, and about halfway through, they too were young, realized that they shouldn't have been doing this. This is just like a marathon. By that time, everyone on the escalator and the stairs coming down all stood and cheered on this person who was running up the escalator until finally they got to the top, sweating and dripping like they run 50 miles and whatever, and everyone clapped them and cheered them, okay? But you can do that. You can imagine a 50-year-old then being carted off in an ambulance, but no. When we're young, we can, there is a chance that we can just run up the escalator. At some point in life, either old age or metaphorical oldness, it kind of stagnant. And then what happens is the speed that the escalator is moving down is the same speed that we're just climbing up. In one sense, though we are walking every step, we're not getting anywhere. And even if we stop for a short second, we actually then go down. The seeker of Allah in the hereafter, the salik, needs to always be a climber. But they need to be sensitive enough to know that sometimes their steps need to be quicker in climbing so that they don't fall into the tragedy of either staying stationary, even though they're moving, or worse still, sliding back. It happens with many of us practicing Muslims who then after uni and whatever, we get a 9-to-5 job, settle down, family, children, whatever. And even though there's so much khair going on there, we're raising children in the reverent fear and righteousness and of God, of Allah, which is in itself one of the great things. And we're having a halal income, again, one of the great acts of ibadah. But kind of in our spiritual journey, it's stagnated. I'm still praying regularly. I'm still giving my zakat and fasting in Ramadan. Occasionally might do the extra fast. Most of my attention is now just on life and children and family and whatever. And my spiritual ambition just slacks. It just goes off for a variety of reasons. So this is, perhaps in one sense, it's more for those of us who have kind of been around a long time than it is for the young, vibrant heart, because the young, vibrant heart is all, they just need to be steered. The engine is already revving, right? But us, it's kind of like, we know how to we know how to steer. We just can't even get the ignition turned on, right? And it's just like just coughing and sputtering away, right? So who knows? Okay, enough of that waffle. Let's get to the meaty stuff. Let me give you an example of how, in a fairly bad way, Arabic poetry could be recited. Don't take this as a measure of all things, okay? And try to hold back your tears when you hear me. So, in poetry form, Sheikh Abdurrahman As-Sa'di rahmatullahi alayhi says, the author of the poem, سعيد الذين تجنبوا سبل الردى وتيمموا لمنازل الرضوان فهم الذين أخلصوا في مشيهم متشرعين بشرعة الإيمان وهم الذين بنوا منازل سيرهم بين الرجاء والخوف للديان وهم الذين ملأ الإله قلوبهم بوداده ومحبة الرحمن. And the poem goes on with the noon ending, the ni ending. So, let's take each, that gives you an idea. Let's read the English translation of the poem, which is on, actually, go back a bit, and it's on the Roman numeral page 26, XXV1. I'll read it out with quickly, because we're going to explore it bit by bit. Fortunate are those who avoid the destructive paths intending the station of Allah's good pleasure, those who journey with the utmost sincerity, following the legislation by which faith is measured, those who build the station of their journey, submitting between being fearful and being hopeful, those whose hearts the divine has filled with devotion to him and love for the most merciful, those who remember him and do so abundantly in private, public, and all times in continuance, seeking nearness to the sovereign master by obeying him and forsaking disobedience. Doing what is obligatory and optional is their way, inspecting their own faults and their deficiencies, their souls patiently enduring all that is disdainful, desirous of what it entails of benevolence. They arrive at the station of contentment and ultimately reaching the garden and safety. For his bounties to his creation, they are grateful with the hearts, with their tongues and the limbs of their body. Reliance is their companion in all affairs, while striving in the pleasure of the All-Merciful, worshipping the divine, believing in his presence, thus taking their place at the station of excellence. Advising others to that which pleases their Lord with knowledge, guidance, and compassion, accompanying the people in bodily form, whilst their spirits hover or dwell at a sublimer station. They alert creation to their complete need for Allah, continuously fearing a decrease in their faith. Their hearts turn away from all distractions, completely emptied of other than the All-Merciful. Their movements, their concerns, and their resolves are all for Allah, not creation nor the devil. The best of friends is the seeker of these paths, which leads to acquiring goodness and ihsan and excellence. That is really, in summary, in a nutshell, the inward law of Islam, the path of ihsan, the path of tazkiyah, the path of suluk, the path of tasawwuf, the inner dimension of the religion. As Ibn al-Qayyim says, flipping it around, okay, he's now not talking about the obligatory acts of the heart, he's talking about the forbidden diseases of the heart, of the soul. He says, keeping away from ujub and kibr, arrogance and self-conceit, is far more obligatory than keeping away from wine and eating pork. Meaning keeping away from the diseases of the heart is far more obligatory than keeping away from the outward sins of the limbs. Flipping that around, he says elsewhere, the action of the heart is far more obligatory than the action of the limbs. The obligatory action of the heart, like love of Allah, fear of Him, reliance on Him, for example, patience with His decree, those are obligations, fara'id, wajibat, are more obligatory than the obligatory actions. All of it is obligatory. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says, just putting some flesh onto it, he says, you can see a person, I mean, it's a long thing he writes, but I'm summarizing. You can see a person pray, and outwardly, they're praying exactly the same. Outwardly, they're praying exactly the same, according to the Sharia, according to what they believe to be the Sunnah. Their prayer is valid. Inwardly, there could be the difference between the heavens and the earth, between the prayer. Why? Because of the inward reality, the inward state of the heart. And yet today from the pulpit, the sheikh, the da'i, the knowledgeable brother, the knowledgeable sister, those kind of bid'ah terms that we have, knowledgeable brother, what does that mean? Knowledgeable brother. Either you're qualified and you have ijazah to teach, authorized to teach, or you're not. Let's hope we're all educated lay Muslims, that we all know the basics of what it means to be a Muslim and how to get on with life. But there's no such thing as a knowledgeable brother or a sister as such. Other than, here is a brother or sister that, mashallah, knows the minimum basics of Islam. And alhamdulillah, that's nothing, there's no title to it, is there? Like there is an alim or a decent talib al-ilm in the formal sense of the word, studying under sheikhs, not doing the kind of YouTubes and read a few pages and a few books. Right? Alhamdulillah. That's a bid'ah, right? That's an innovation, if ever there was one. And the da'i, if they're not an alim, then we're all meant to be doing da'wah whilst we're living outside of a majority Muslim country, right? And most of us need to do da'wah with our actions more than our words. Some of us need to do da'wah with our words. But all of us need to do da'wah with our actions and our states. Okay, for most of us, it's try not to do da'wah with words where you can, if you can avoid it. Because, sometimes you hear a Muslim, I'm sure non-Muslims have the same problem as well, and they get up and they do a speech at someone's wedding. First 1 minute, 2 minutes, decent, and then if you're not a public speaker, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a bit cringy. Bro, how do I tell the bro to just sit down? Maybe someone needs to shout out dinner, or something like that. Because most of us aren't kind of public speakers knowing really the kind of nuance of how to hold people's attention and so on. And sometimes when we're not used to publicly speaking, we can say things that like, same thing with da'wah. Da'wah is sometimes best unserved when the common person starts, doesn't have enough knowledge and says something and it's like, oh, kind of the scholar is sitting there, she's putting her hijab over her eyes or his hat over his head or whatever. But honesty, integrity, trustworthiness, kindness, compassion, generosity in an age in which, my daughter-in-law's half of the side of the family were not Muslims. Many of them have converted. And she one time said, I'm going to try to generalize it, not to specify anything here. So when I was growing up, and I grew up in a housing estate with mostly with non-Muslims when I was young. It was really common that when I'm with my Muslim friends, we're kind of just buying things for each other. We go into a coffee shop or whatever. No, I'll pay. No, put away your wallet. I'll pay. Okay, and we used to get that from our elders. Or no, when they go out with their friends, whatever, they'll pay. When I was with my non-Muslim friends, and I'm not saying all non-Muslims are like this, but it is English culture. And it might even be British culture, I'm not quite sure. English culture that, it's like, each pay for themselves and kind of thing. And like, if I do pay for you, I do expect you to give me out when we get outside the shop, give me the £1.50 that I paid for your coffee, or £3.5p that I paid for your coffee. It's just kind of whatever. But for the Muslims, it's like, the non-Muslim is standing there and the two Muslim brothers are arguing. No, I'll pay. It's going to get into a fight in a minute. They're rolling up their sleeves that, each of them got to pay. I don't want you to pay. You're my brother. I love you for the sake of Allah, but you pay, right? I'm going to box your nose off. And the non-Muslim is thinking, what is going? That's, and that's not even practicing Muslims. Most Muslims, we do this. There is that kind of generic culture, unless of course you're a convert from an English it may not work there. I'll give it a month or two, you'll be socialized into that. And it's a good thing, alhamdulillah. You get to majority Muslim countries and they do it even better, even if they're not practicing in their life. But there was a point I was trying to make, and I lost the plot here. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. No problem. Let's get down to the first piece of poetry. Or shall we have a break? Yeah. Let's do a break. So we're really clear on what we're doing? Okay, so you'll now find the next 18 lines of poetry, 5-7 minutes on each, are really, really simple. But what they will help to do is just, in a very constructive way, help me to see the map, right? So I know where I am, Redbridge, on the central line. I'm really focused, and the next stop is Gants Hill, and the one before that is Wanstead. I don't know anything else because I'm so looking at the map so close. And someone says to me, you know what, just get a real good picture of the underground, step back a few steps up Aaaliyah, and you see, wow, this is some sophisticated network. Because now you can see the whole map, the different lines and how they're all interconnected. You think, wow. But up close, you think, okay, that's good. There's a station nearby. Likewise, sometimes we look at things up close, and it's good and we need to. But today we're just going to step back, see if it can all click, and then go home and do all of those up close throughout our lives, inshallah. 10-minute break?